YouTube land. This is Brenton Sawin coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. I guess that's my new typical intro, because I live in Kentucky and I am in the Bluegrass State, and it's a beautiful state here, and I enjoy talking to people from all around the world. Today we have with us someone very, very interesting that I've been talking to and exploring some of his stories. He's going to share with us one story he has today that from when he was a kid, and he actually saw kind of what some people would call Skinwalker, I guess. And so I don't want to make everybody wait too long for me to keep on and on introducing here. But Merlin is on the phone, and he's going to tell you a wild story. It's very, very interesting, so I hope you all enjoy this. How you doing today, Merlin?
I'm great.
All right,
I'm doing
man.
good.
Well, when you told me that story, man, I've been thinking about it all week and waiting for the weekend to come so I could call you back, because I know you're busy during the week. But if you would, man, just kind of take us back to when and tell the story however you want to, lead into it, or whatever you think needs to be said to kind of give a background to it and everything, where you were living, what state, and things like that, and share with everybody what you saw and what you experienced when you were a kid.
Will do, Brenton. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I have watched some of your videos, and one of the things that I've seen, I was always kind of looking to see it and get verification from. So that kind of led me into getting a hold of you. So I'll just jump right into it. It was years ago, and I was probably 5, possibly 6, and it was the early 80s. And we're here in Washington State on the west side of the mountains. At any rate, my mom and my dad were not exactly normal. They knew some pretty interesting folks. And it took me a long time to kind of come to grips with some of the stuff that I dealt with. But this story in particular always just really seared into my mind, and it wasn't until later, and we'll get to that. So we're with my mom and her friend, and we're driving, and she had an old Dobson B210. It was orange, I remember. And she had military-style pins stuck into the dashboard. At any rate, we were driving in this car, and it was late at night, and we were talking about, not me so much, but they were talking about how they had to get to this lady's house to get something, kind of code wording it. So I don't know what we were there for, what any of the details. But we drive for a long time, and we wind up way out into the sticks, out into the up in the hills. And we come down this one road, and we go down it for a long time, and we turn down a single lane road, and there's no houses on it whatsoever. We go down that road for, I'm going to guess, a couple miles, because we were going pretty fast. And there was no other cars, no lines on the road, other than having to look out for elk or deer. So anyways, we go down this road, and then off in the distance you can see a house. And we pull up to that house, and it's on the left-hand side at the end of a dead-end road. And it kind of just went into the road, just kind of stopped into the trees. And here's this house. So we pull into the left, with the house being on the left-hand side. So we pulled straight in. We get out and we knock on the door, and it takes a minute. And they finally open the door up, and the lady's like kind of hesitant and kind of nervous. Things you just kind of see that are out of place, especially when you're younger.
Right.
At any rate, we go inside the house. She finally lets us inside, and she's talking to him about having to get stuff. And they go inside to get to whatever they're looking for, and I go inside, and I'm automatically drawn to this fish tank, which was sitting inside. So as you walk straight into the door, well, as you walk up to the door, there's like a 4x4 landing before you get into the door, kind of like a patio screened off deal. And you get inside, and straight ahead, there's this little fish tank on this wall, and it goes to the right into the living room. And then right before that, it goes to the left into the kitchen, and that's where they're at. So I'm standing behind them as they're talking, and I get drawn to this fish tank. So I walk over to it, and as I'm walking over to it, I see some motion out of the corner of my eye. I don't really put two and two together or think anything of it. And then I get pulled back to the group, like telling me to leave it alone and that kind of stuff. Being little, of course, they get sidetracked talking, doing their thing, and I go back over there, and this all happened pretty quick. I go back over there, and I'm doing this thing, and I hear this kind of this noise, this guy making noise, kind of like or whatever. And I look over, and I see this gentleman. He's sitting in an armchair, kind of like a lazy boy, and he has his feet up on the chair, and he's in nothing but a pair of boxers. Wow. And he's got this black jar in his hands, and I'm just kind of like, my eyes are fixated on this guy. I'm trying to figure out, I've never seen anything like that before. And he's taking handfuls of this stuff out. I mean, I was kind of beside myself. And he's taking handfuls of this stuff, and he's rubbing it on his arm, and he's like putting pats of big globs of this stuff, and it looked like a dark, kind of like a grayish Vaseline with kind of chunky looking. Yeah. And he's rubbing this stuff all over his body. He's rubbing on his leg, kind of leaves over, rubs on the back of his leg, and rubbing on the back of his neck, and just everywhere. And finally, I get pulled back again and kind of reprimanded, kind of a deal, because they realized what I was doing. And the lady's pretty frantic, and she keeps telling us, the lady that lives there, we need to get the hell out of here. We need to get out of here. We need to get out of here. Wow. And you know, being younger, I don't understand what's going on. So
the lady that who owned the house, she was seeming like she was wanting you all to get out of there.
She wanted us all, including herself, to get out of there.
Wow! Like even herself.
She was saying we all need to get the hell out of here, and she kept pushing them. I'm guessing it was something to do with money. I'm guessing maybe they owed them money, or I have no idea. My mom won't talk about it in detail, and you know, being that she's changed her life around and this kind of stuff, she doesn't really try to give any information or give it any time or.
So did you have any sense? Did you have any sense of maybe who the guy who was rubbing the gray looking Vaseline from the weird jar? Did you have any idea of who he was, like an owner also, or the?
Just her boyfriend.
That's
all the information I got about, you know, as we're going. Is she did refer to him as her boyfriend.
Okay.
And it was her house. That's all I knew.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, it was a crazy deal. I mean, and you know, as time went on, he started kind of, you know, the details of it is that he was sitting there, and within a couple minutes that we'd been there, I seen him, and he was really coherent, kind of doing his thing. When I really was staring at him, I noticed that he was kind of progressively getting stranger. And his eyes would roll back in his head, his head would tilt back, and it was kind of like he just kept this, but he had both hands just constantly rubbing around on his, you know, under his arms and behind his back and his ears, everywhere. Up in his hair. I mean, he looked like a hot mess, this guy did, because he didn't have short hair either. I mean, this stuff was all over him. It looked, I was dumbfounded.
Right.
And of course, you know, it was kind of you know, surreal, even at a younger age. I'm not even sure what surreal is, but so she's yelling at us we need to get out. We need to get out of this house. We need to get, you know, just down out of here. You know, my mom's like, well, do you want to go down here and do this? Or go have coffee or something? She's like, adamantly telling her, I don't give a F. We need to get out of here. So at any rate, I got one more glimpse of the guy, and by this time he was kind of curled over, kind of fetal position on the side of the chair, and you know, they all kind of walked out, and we're standing in this little walkway that leads out to the door, and we're standing back now, so none of us can see over there, and my mom starts saying something about the guy, but she's whispering. I'm like, okay, Well, she starts just yelling. She's pushing us, and I don't know what what the lady of the house seen. But she glanced over, and she literally started shoving us out the door. And we got out to the door, into the doorway, and now I'm curious. So I'm like trying to see what the heck's going on. You know, like what is the deal? What's so freaking crazy? And my mom snatches me up, like literally drags me out.
I mean, what did your mom think about some dude in his boxer shorts rubbing some kind of weird Vaseline stuff from a strange jar? I mean, that would seem almost. I mean, if I walked in somewhere and some dude's in his boxers rubbing stuff all over himself, I think I would be a little bit freaked out. Just even if the dude wasn't strange acting or you know doing other weird eye rolling back kind of stuff, or you know, I mean, that would be kind of almost perverted looking.
Right, and at 5 years old, you don't really put that kind of thing together.
Right.
You know, and the way the whole thing worked out, then you know, it kind of made I was kind of the way it all turned out in the end. I don't know if I'd ever almost rather had him be a weirdo than what happened.
Yeah. So I guess go back to where this lady's pushing you all out of the house, and it seems very urgent coming from her and what have you. And go continue from there if you would.
Okay, so she gets us outside. I'm getting banged up on the way out in the little breezeway patio deal. Kind of just, you know, my mom wasn't like that, so I knew that there was something going on because she was not caring about my welfare as far as bumps and bruises goes, but it almost seemed like life or death, kind of like dragging me out of a bad situation. And I've been in a bad situation with her before, so I was kind of familiar with that because there was a fight in a restaurant, but that was another story. And it was just, you know, people were fighting, and I got dragged out of the way, and got kind of lumped up when I was younger. But it was one of those things. So I could sense the urgency, and as we got pushed basically out of that doorway off the little stair there, the lady shot past us, and she yelled some profanity about getting the hell out of here. And she jumped in her car, and her car was backed in instead of, you know, in straight. Her car was backed in, so she jumped in her car, fired it right up, lickety split, and took off. I mean, she took off, you know, tires peeling out, the whole deal.
Wow.
We get in our car. We finally climb into this, you know, and we're not tiny people, none of us. Well, I was smaller. I was a kid, but my mom's not a small, you know, lady. It's taller, and this car is tiny. You know, I'm not sure if you remember those Datsun B210s, but
yeah, we had one.
It was
like a bumblebee.
And her friend was a heavy set lady, so it took her a second to kind of, I don't know how to say it, like kind of jimmy herself into the steering wheel, you know.
Yeah.
She was heavy set, you know. She had to kind of wiggle herself to get in the car. And by that time, my mom had the door shut, and she was holding on to me with one arm, gripping me, like squeezing me, and she's yanking on her friend to get in. And we kind of see this commotion. Well, first we hear some noises, kind of hear some thrashing around or whatever, and that's when my mom started, you know, grabbing her friend and like yanking her in the car and like trying to grab the keys and this. Anyways, we were sitting there for just a second. She finally gets the keys in the car, gets it started. Right about the time she gets it started, I don't know what they're seeing, because they're driving and God knows what else. But I'm looking at the door, like my eyes never leave that doorway. And I'm hearing the noises, and, you know, they didn't have no pets or no nothing. There was a fish tank in there. At one point, it sounded like some stuff breaking. Could have been the fish tank. I don't know. But what I do know is I've seen this heavy mass looking, I feel, you know, this was a good, probably 8 or 10 foot tall patio space with a screen door on there, kind of a deal. And when we walked in, you know, you feel rather only about halfway up it or whatever. You know, it's a pretty big space, but this thing filled the whole space up to the point where there was a light inside there, and it actually blacked the light out. And it kind of looked like it was shuffling left and right, kind of like trying to push its way out the door.
Wow.
Like it was kind of jammed up inside the door.
Yeah.
And as that thing came out, you know, we're finally backing up, and she, my mom's friend, she's got it to the floor. She's backing this thing up for all it's worth, just holding it to the, it was just blah, 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 and backing straight down the road. And this we probably got, oh man, I would say 30, well, maybe 20 or 30 yards away. As we're backing up, this thing finally it looked like it broke loose, and it came out and took strides, these long lunging strides out into the road, and stopped and turned and looked towards us, and it started doing this. It started coming towards us, and as we're accelerating backwards to the point where it felt like the car was gonna lose control. It was slinging us all over. I remember that. At any rate, this thing comes doing this huffing, this lunge, this big, massive bulk of lunge, and the way the light from the house, because they had floodlights out there, were shining on this thing, and all I could see was like muscle mass, like the shape, the shadow of this big, massive thing, just doing these lunges or huge strides of a run, I guess. But as we're backing up, it just stops. It stops in the road, and it stands up, and this thing is huge.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know. I couldn't make it out. It really did look doggish to me.
Right.
From what I could see is the shape, like I said, from the light on the side of the house, shining on the side of it. Because it came out the door, and right after it comes out the door, as you come away from the house, there's floodlights right on the corner there on the top. So it was kind of shining at, kind of straight on, but at an angle as it took off running. So it went out of the one floodlight and into the next one that was shining, they're kind of shining at 45-degree angles. And it came into that one, and it didn't get too much further past the light where we're really straining to see with the high beams on. And that's when it stopped. And when it stopped, we went a little bit further, and then she cranked the wheel and spun the car around sideways to where she was looking out her window down the road, and she just dropped it, and put it to the wood, and we drove off. And I talked to my mom about it, and she would never talk to me about it, so kind of over the time she started telling me it was a bad dream for years. And as fate would have it, I think I was in 8th grade, and we had to do a project on, it was a whole project, like this, you had to bring a display in, do an essay. It was a big deal, and it was all on, like legends and superstition and that kind of thing.
All right.
So as I'm doing this, it's pretty interesting, but then I get into this one book, and it's talking about the legends about making deals with the proverbial devil, and that, and I'm reading this, and I flip the page over, and they show a picture of this little black jar in this book, and my jaw dropped, my stomach dropped, but at the same time, it was relieving. It was this sense of relief came over me because I'm reading this thing, and it said that, that you'd get this jar, and you'd apply it to your body at such and such, and you get it from so-and-so, and, the details of all that's usually pretty much the same as far as who you're getting it from and all that kind of stuff. So I take that, and all day, it just tears me up, like to the point where I just want to skip school and go find my mother and say, hey. So I finally get home, and it's driving me nuts. I finally get to see her, and I said, hey, do you remember this? And I kind of briefly touch on it, so I know she knows what I'm talking about. And she's like, oh, yeah, that was a crazy dream. And I was like, yeah, about that. I came and I showed it to her, and I said, here, read right here. She read the little part, and I flipped the page over, and it showed that jar. And her jaw just dropped, and she just looked at me with this blank stare on her face. And I said, so about that dream? And she goes, yeah, about that dream. She goes, that actually happened.
Yeah. So.
And
you find, so that, I think that was one of the things that stood out to you about my story is I ended up seeing a picture of something that I saw in a magazine. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, whoa, and it's just and then of course the stories about the Dogman, I was like trying to get a little more details, see if something led back to that.
Yeah.
What I had experienced. And, it was through that seeing that and then seeing it, and I was like, well, I'm not seeing anything about that, so I figured I'd try to get a hold of you, and if it was supposed to happen, it would.
So this
then,
jar.
maybe who knows? More people. What's that?
So this jar that this guy had, you actually seen a jar that looked just like that in the book when you were doing your studies and on these.
It was very similar. Very similar. It was a black jar. It had a brass or a gold lid on it, and the gold lid looked like a handmade brass or copper when it kind of got the etching, not necessarily etching, but kind of hammered in, like designs on it.
Right.
It looked like that. But he when I looked at that lid, he grabbed it. He wasn't even looking at me. But I looked at that lid, and he grabbed it, and he stuffed it under himself so I couldn't see it, or because he didn't want to lose it. I don't know, but it was almost like he knew I was looking at it, and I wasn't supposed to, or I'm not sure. That was kind of like the feeling of it,
Yeah.
I looked at it, I glanced at it a couple times, and when I fixed my eyes on it, and I kind of was like leaning in to try to see it, and he was pointing completely at a 90-degree angle away from me, with his head down, and he was rubbing this stuff on the back of his shoulders and stuff like this. And that same hand, it's like right as I'm looking at it, his hand reaches down, grabs the thing off the arm of the chair back by his elbow on the other side and sticks it under his leg.
Right. Wow. So in the book when you were reading that, it was some kind of it was a jar that had some kind of something that you were to rub on yourself,
Yeah.
and what did the book say that it was?
The book said that stories vary, is what the book said, and I really wish I would have at least kept the information or what the book was named. But what it did say is that it was an ointment. It referred to it as an ointment that you would get, or spell in whatever you call it, maker,
like a potion.
Right. Like a potion kind of deal, but you're not drinking it.
Right.
And it did say it that stories varied from it containing a black, almost tar-like substance to a gray, lumpy substance. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And because that's what I seen was gray. I mean, I swear I seen hair in it. If my memory serves me correctly.
Right.
There was lumps in it. There was lumps in there. And there was, like, if you were to take hair and stick it in, like, short hair, maybe 1-2 inches long, and throw it in Vaseline and mix it up real good and turned it gray, it would be, and then maybe threw in some really small chunks of rocks that were just kind of different shapes.
Right.
It was like that. It was like loose little chunks. But what was crazy is when this guy was rubbing it on his body.
Yeah.
There was nothing. It just looked like he was greased over. There was, this guy was smooth. He had long hair, but his arms and stuff were smooth. And he's grabbing this stuff by the handfuls and he's rubbing it on his arms. And I can see it when he scoops it out. I can see it in the pile in his hand, and I can see it on the edge of the jar. But as soon as he rubs it on himself, when I'm looking at his arm, there's no lumps, there's no hair sticking out of it. It was crazy.
Wow. So maybe the hair that you were seeing in the substance was like from a wolf or something like that. So you believe?
Man, I would guess, yeah. I would imagine.
So it sounds like that he had some kind of spell or some kind of magic that he was using this ointment to. And maybe the jar has some significance too, but to turn into a werewolf.
Right, and in that book it talked about, basically you sell your soul kind of a deal is basically what it said, and that you did not, and it said it more than once in this book, it said, and who knows how valid or viable this information is, but it said in the book more than one time, and I remember reading, it said that you could not keep that jar. So literally, you would go get this jar, you make your deal, I don't know, and it said, basically through calling on a spirit or, whichever way. There's several different ways to do it. And I don't really like getting into too much detail about that stuff. If people want to know about it, they can do some research. But they would invoke, call this thing to them, or or whatever it was, maybe the devil himself, who's to say. And when you gave him this thing, you'd use it for how, I don't know how it worked, if it was multiple use or how that worked. It didn't say anything about that. But when you were done, you had to give it back to the guy. But it did say that you could get more. It did say that you could get basically a refill.
Okay. Well, I interviewed J.C. Johnson from Crypto Four Corners, and he talked about the Skinwalker thing and what he had found out. And I don't know if you've watched that video, but he said something about you'd sell your soul to the devil. Sometimes there are sacrifices involved in the techniques that the Native Americans used, but they actually could change themselves into other creatures. So it looks like you had a glimpse of it that really happening. Did the guy look Native American?
He had long hair, but this guy he was pretty greased up. But on the same time, kind of on the flip side of that, my mom had a history hanging out with natives. Usually, and it wasn't in a good way. It was always the bad element of, it was all.
I got you.
Kind of draw your own conclusion. Yeah. She was into some dark stuff at one point because she was just a confused woman.
Yeah. Well, maybe this guy was, who knows? I'm just wondering if you noticed. I'm sure that whoever could sell their soul. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, anybody basically is. From what I've gathered. And had my mom just told me the truth about that, I wouldn't even know nearly as much about that stuff as I do now. Because some of the things that happened to me as a grown up, I wanted answers for, and I was all, I'm not an idiot. I know what I see and what I don't see, and I know what dreams are and what aren't. So these things that happen, and I would want answers, so I would go and look for answers, and it led me to learning a lot of stuff I didn't know, and was probably better off not knowing.
Yeah. Well,
and had she just been forthcoming with it about it, then I'd have been like, okay, that's fine. Well, moving on. But that's not how it went down. So.
Right. Now, well, obviously, just like when I later, saw the Shaver Mister magazine, and I seen a picture of a Darrow, and I realized that other people had seen one of those beings. That helped me somewhat because I know what I saw, and sometimes you can't really talk to people much about it, but when you get verification that you're not nuts, I mean that's a good, it's healing, and you knew what you saw. I don't like the naysayer saying, "Oh, you were sleeping," or "You were," when you were awake, or you know what I'm saying, and all that.
Well, until it happens to them, you could walk in there with proof in your hand, like a skin sample, and that happens with Bigfoots. We both know that. That you could walk in there with proof positive, and somebody still. And I know people who are skeptics because, like I said, I live here in Washington, and they would move up. People I know who'd move up here from Arizona, and they're avid hunters. Now they will not go out into the woods by themselves at all. And it's because it wasn't until they came face to face, or even up on the hillside, and see this giant mass literally rip out a tree that looks 15, 20 feet tall, and use it as a baseball bat to start playing drums on other trees to scare your ass. You're gonna have a change in your ways.
Yeah. Oh man, I tell you what. Now I've had experiences when I was a kid, and I didn't really know what was going on, and it wasn't really until I started covering the Dogman, Bigfoot, and stuff like that, and covering these mysteries, that I realized that I remember playing out in the cornfield before and running into a crop circle and thinking, wow, this is a perfect circle, or tree, huge limbs snapping when I was playing out in the woods and wondering what the heck is making that noise, and things like that. And it kind of makes sense that things go on around us, but we just kind of ignore it. We
get told that none of it exists. We are from a very young age. We are conditioned. Boogeyman's not real. Well, the things that you've dealt with, what would you call it? If you're a kid and you heard about the boogeyman and then you seen something like that, you would be like, hey, I just seen the boogeyman. And of course, people are going to laugh at you.
Yeah.
My son, some stuff happened to my son, And his mom's side of the family was like telling him, that's you were dreaming, this, that, and the other, and other things happened. And they were telling him not to tell me. And then so finally I kind of overheard him and I asked him about it. And he told me everything that happened. And I said, look, this stuff is real. You've seen it with your own eyes. Leave all of that alone. When you see this stuff, if you feel threatened, if you see it at all, just to be safe, call on the Lord.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Amen.
It doesn't matter if it's an alien, a Bigfoot, a demon. It doesn't matter what it is. When you call his name, it doesn't matter.
Right. Are you there? Wow, isn't that ironic that when you get to the part where you're talking about the Lord, things shut off. Well, anyway, let me pause this and see if I can get him back on the line there, and we'll close this out. And interesting.
This is Warren.
Hey, Warren. Sorry about that, man. We got cut off.
It's fine. I just kind of gave me an opportunity to put my daughter down.
As soon as you brought up the Lord, man, you notice that happens quite often.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's kind of a strong calling on my life. Speaking of the Lord, he tends to send people that are dealing with stuff that conventional churches just don't seem to want to handle. So, and I don't have no problems with that.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, man. It's a fascinating story.
Right. Yeah. It's I've tried sharing it with a few people, usually only close friends. And what's crazy is even they look at you like, even a really close family friend, pastor. I tried telling him that story one time, and he was just like, it sounds a little far fetched. And I just looked at him. I said, well, that's crazy because he's an older gentleman, and he grew up in the Samoan Islands, and even to this day, the chiefs in the islands will put and this is, they don't usually share this information, but at any rate, they'll put their workload outside, like buckets they need to take up to the springs in the mountains. Well, they all got plumbing now, but or things they need to carry down to the beach for whatever reason, down to their canoes, etc., for fishing.
Yeah.
Like they bring their fishing nets and everything up, clean them up at the house, and then they'll just leave them outside. And they just kind of have this going understanding where they call them the little people, and the Samoan translation is the little people, and these things will come and carry everything you need to where you need it. So in the morning you can just walk down there and not have to deal with none of it.
Yeah, those are very interesting stories. A lot of people say that those are some Hollow Earth type things too.
Right.
And, the gnomes and the fairy legends and all that. There's some truth to those things, and people used to believe those things a lot more. And it seems like stories like that are coming out more because shows like this, where you can share your stories. And
right. Exactly.
There's
it's just one of those things, that in Hawaii they have the Menehunis, right? That's they call them Menehunis, and they have the sacred rock mounds there. And if you can't touch one or you'll get sick. I've heard that story circulate before, and there's truth to that. Where if they have these rock mounds, and if you take one, it's like you're cursed until you return it. In fact, they actually did an episode on the Brady Bunch about that exact thing. About him taking the rock and getting all sick and having to return it. And I thought that was kind of crazy when I was younger and seeing that. I was like, whoa, they put that on TV. And, they're like, my mom tells me, well, they think it's fake, so it's just good entertainment. I'm like, well, there's a lot of people out there that know it ain't fake. Right. But the bottom line of that whole situation is they are almost identical. I would almost be willing to bet they are one and the same, other than they're like chameleons. They can change their appearance slightly. Right. They're one and the same as leprechauns.
Yeah. Now I have one video of I caught the guy said he lived in Hawaii, and there was an old rock mound like remnants of a temple, and
blood sacrifice temples.
Yeah, and he'd ran across this lemon head. He said it had a head that was shaped like a lemon, and it had these red
Right.
eyes,
Yep.
and
Yep.
very
That's
interesting.
bad news, man.
Yeah, and he was a
That's bad
child
news.
too.
That's some of the stuff.
Him and his friend saw it, and they ran to their parents and told them, and when they did, the parents kind of dismissed them, but the friend that he was with, he said he never did get to see that friend again. The parents wouldn't let them hang out together no more. That's the
Oh yeah,
kind
because the people that know about that stuff see it as an omen. They're really into superstition, and they see it as an omen.
of right.
So they don't want them hanging around together in case it's an omen that because they've both seen it at the same time, that it's an omen that they would I spent a lot of time growing up in Hawaii,
Right.
and so I'm pretty familiar with some of that stuff. Not didn't really witness too much stuff firsthand. I had a couple things go on, but nothing like I heard more about it. And one of those things is an omen that if you see it, something bad's going to happen. And if you see it with a friend, then something bad's going to happen to the both of you. So the parents, rightfully so, thinking, well, you don't need to be hanging out with that kid no more because, I'm trying to make sure that nothing happens to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. It's those. The cool thing about the Polynesian Islands is they're so fresh, coming into the world of technology that a lot of that stuff is still fresh. Instead of being off the stove altogether, it's just on the back burner. Even to the point where it's affecting people even recently. Like if you were to look up the tunnel in Hawaii that they were trying to punch through for that highway, and everything under the sun, there was loss of life, machinery malfunctioning, everything else. So they had to go get a Hawaiian, basically the equivalent of a Hawaiian medicine man, to come inside and go in there. And the guy said, "Okay, I'll go." At first he was reluctant. But finally said, "Okay, I'll go." And he goes in there, and he was in there for I don't remember. It was a long time. He was in there a long time by himself, pitch black. Goes in there, and he comes out, and he says, "Okay." The ancestors, which these things aren't their ancestors. They're not ancestors. These things are, whether it's a ghost in your house, it doesn't matter what. They're not people. They never are. Like from my experience, every time there's been a spirit around or somebody saying that they're having a spirit stuff happen, either they're using a Ouija board or because they're real bummed out, they're like, "Oh, I just seen my dad," and it's like, as soon as I start praying for them or tell them to pray about it, then the truth is revealed that, hey, this wasn't my family member, or this wasn't this, or it wasn't. Because, the devil can show himself to be an angel of light. If he can do that, then that means all his little cronies, they can show up to be whatever they want you to see.
Yeah.
And who knows? It could even be all the way down to the fairies and the Minahunis and the, trolls. Who knows? Hard to say.
Yeah. So the moral of the story there, when you were finishing up, is that calling on the Lord, that's going to be the number one thing that anyone should do, no matter what kind of contact with whatever hidden cryptid or spirit they come in contact with, is that Jesus is the way, no matter what, huh?
The way, the truth, and the life, absolutely. And there's his everything he says is the truth. There can be no error found in him or in God the Father. So you call on him when this stuff goes down. When he makes a promise, it is a promise. And if he made the promise, if it's written in the Bible at all, and it is, it says, and this goes for every single word in there, it's easier for the earth and basically the universe to pass away than it is to change a single word in the book of, the Word of God. So when he says, "I promise," it's a promise. There's no ands, ifs, or buts, or maybes, or question marks. It's absolutely guaranteed. The only thing that's the only thing is guaranteed is the fact in life that we're all going to have to face God. We're all going to die at some point. That's the only guaranteed fact in life, along with anything Jesus said he would do for us.
All right. Yeah. Amen, bro. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, man.
What happened? Did the phone call just hang up, or?
It got, I don't know, it just dropped the call. As soon as you brought up, no matter what happens, call on the Lord, and then bam, you got cut off. And, I've had this kind of stuff happen so many times whenever you bring up the Lord. I've had light bulbs blow. I've had all kinds of crazy stuff happen. When I was interviewing Josh Peck from the Sharpening, I mean, light bulbs were blowing and all kinds of crazy stuff, man, because we were going to talk about something and the Lord's power and His authority and what have you, and you get resistance, the prince of the power of the air. I think those spirits they can manipulate electromagnetic. That's what I think.
They don't have the power of creation, but they can manipulate anything that's already created. Anything, any matter that's already existent, they can manipulate.
Right. A lot of times in haunt,
whether it's metal, it doesn't matter. If it's already existent, they can manipulate it. They can make it look like something else. Maybe even transform it into something else. Not sure, but they don't have the power of creation.
No, And Jesus' name has authority. They just don't like you talking about it. And it seems like to me, you know, I could be
on the phone. It's going across the airwaves, and it's going, from my phone to your phone, and and these things they can see pretty much into the future to an extent. So they know where you're going with it, and that this one more facet of what they're up to is going to be exposed and revealed, just like Jesus said in these days. There will be no secret, because this is Him doing this. 10, 15 years ago, if we tried to have this conversation, our phone calls would have probably never went through. Because I've tried helping people over the phone before, and all of a sudden they're saying their phone's disconnected. And, and I kept trying, and it was coming back all kinds of crazy stuff. And then finally, when I was like, oh, I just need to call them just to chit-chat, see what's going on. It worked just fine. And it was the same thing the other direction. When people try to get a hold of me, like, hey, I know you got a direct line to the Lord. And I'm like, no, He's waiting on you. Well, I was trying to call you, it just wouldn't go through. And I was like, that's the kind of thing that happens, They don't want you empowered.
No, No, there seems to be a resistance. I try to be careful about, saying, oh, that's why it dropped or whatever. But the call went perfectly fine until you said something about the Lord, bam, and it drops. And it's just kind of strange to me that that's usually when it happens.
I'll tell you what, I'm talking to you and everything else and the whole discernment and all that type of stuff, just so, maybe we talk about other stuff. There's other interesting stories, but there's a lot of other people out there. If at some point it's supposed to happen, it will. But the bottom line is I will be keeping you in my prayers daily.
Yeah.
Because you are on the front line. I know it doesn't seem like it, or maybe it does, but you're sitting inside your room doing what you got to do. And I know you feel compelled to do so. And knowing that, just even what we're talking about now, the fact that these things are coming against us, they don't forget about it. They don't go, well, hey, they're done talking about it, let's move on. It's all about retaliation, kill, steal, and destroy, period. And that, when the scripture tells us they hate us with perfect hatred, so that sounds like a pretty big grudge and hold a grudge.
Yeah.
So I'll be praying for you, and I have been. Even after I started watching your stuff, and he started talking about, the Lord, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to pray about this guy, and I'm going to keep him in my prayers on a daily basis. The Lord always reminds us, hey, pray about this person, pray about this person.
Right.
And again and again, it's always like, hey, pray about him, pray for protection over him, pray for the spirit of, the anointing on his house, his stuff, his wife, his kids, everybody.
Right.
Keep them covered. Keep them covered. Keep them prayed up. So
yeah. Oh, dude. I certainly can use it, man. Sometimes it's hard to keep plugging away at it, but I do. I'll keep on doing it as long as God will.
Chop us down.
Yeah. But anyway, I got some company on the way, and I wanted to give you a call before the house got too noisy. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. And
I look forward to seeing some more of your videos. I'll probably do that right after my daughter falls asleep. See what you got out there fresh, because I got it telling me when you do. So
all right,
we'll do that. And God bless you, man. Keep up the work, and no matter what comes your way.
All right.
In the next week or whatever, no matter what you got to face, just know that He's with you.
Well, thank you very much, man, and God bless you, brother, and we'll talk to you later, man. All right.
Yes. You have a good one. Bye.
All right. Thank you. All right, YouTube land. thank you for watching and sticking with me throughout the show here. And ask that you like, share, comment, subscribe, and sharing these videos helps me out and helps me keep going and making these shows. So, see you on the next video. Bye bye.